Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. I'm Jason Abrams, and this is the place where we lift the curtain on the world of real estate like never before. Every week, I sit down with visionaries, pirates, and mavericks. We're here to document, demonstrate, and most importantly, demystify their game-changing models and systems. What secrets propel them to the top? And how are they living their dreams? This is about passion, it's about strategy, but above all, it's about real, tangible success. So buckle up and let's dive in. This is the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. What if I told you that there's a real estate agent out there that picks the exact number of transactions that she wants to do each year, and as soon as she hits that number, she takes the rest of the year to enjoy her life and do the things she wants to do? And what if I told you she sells $40 million worth of real estate by herself every year to do it? You'd want to tune in, and thank gosh you are here and you did. I am speaking about none other than Aubrey Martin. She is going to unpack for us how she picks the number of units she does, and then how she generates enough leads with one of the most powerful business-to-business networking models that I've ever documented. Sit back and buckle up. This is Aubrey Martin. Aubrey, how are you?
I'm doing awesome, Jason. How about yourself?
I am fantastic. Thanks for asking. So we are going to unpack the business, the structure, your lead generation. We're going to get to all of it. But before we do, I'd like you to take us back. Before you were a real estate agent, how did you find the greatest industry in the world?
My husband, because he's been telling me for nearly 2 decades that I should be going into real estate. But I didn't enter real estate until I was about 40. Before then, I was in what I like to consider consultative sales. So I was in college admissions back on the West Coast here, and then we ran pet supply stores that specialized in homeopathy and supplements and nutrition back in Maine for many, many years. And when we moved back to Oregon, which was in about 2017, we had to come up with a different plan. And my husband said, now is the time. I know you don't know anybody in Oregon. I know all of our friends are gone from college, but now is the time to start something new. And so for once, I listened to my husband, and he was right. Although sadly, this is recorded now, but he was right.
Well, golly, I didn't realize that. So you get to Oregon in 17 and you start scratch without really having a network.
Correct. I did not know anybody here. All of the friends that we had known had already moved on. And we'll get into this as we chat, but I fell back on the thing that I do well, which I did well back in my previous positions, which is to network at a very, very high level and really focus on that.
And what about family? Because you mentioned your husband, but there's more than just the two of you.
There are more than just the two. I also have my 2 kiddos who are now 15 and 11, but they, from the very beginning, have been on payroll, and we brought them into the business during the pandemic so that they could help with events and marketing. And my daughter sometimes will come with me to showings so that she can hang out with my clients' kids in the backyard. So they've been a really integral part of the business. So during the pandemic, we didn't really want to decide if I was going to work or if I was going to be a mom. And so we just decided to mesh those together so that I could work at the level that I wanted to and not miss out on time with my kids.
Before we switch gears and get into it, you mentioned a phrase, consultative sales. And that phrase must mean something to you because it's a unique one. When you say that, what do you mean? And more importantly, what did you learn from all of those years that brought you to the success you're having today?
I think that's a great question. And for me, what it means is education, and coming from a place of education and service first and foremost. So sales and that, of course, I am selling something, but really the pinnacle of all of this is to be someone who is educating clients and then let them decide how they want to proceed based on the information, and being the person that really is the professional in the situation. No matter what it is, whether it's cat litter or whether it's houses, it's the same thing. It all translates into the same thing.
I like that. The interesting thing for me about your business, it's twofold. Number one, I love business to business. And I think that the way that you cultivate those relationships is different than you might with someone in your database. And we'll get there. But it's even before that, because when we were doing our pre-interview, you said, I do about, call it 60, 65, 70 transactions a year. And then I say when. I didn't even know what you were talking about. Can you explain to us when you say, I say when, how did you get there? And what does that even mean?
So my one thing, which is a book that means a lot, and I was fortunate enough to be interviewed by Jay about this as well, is that everybody says that their one thing is their family. For me, we had a child, our first son, who passed away about 15 years ago, and we didn't know if we were going to go on to have more children or if we could. And it was a lot of work and prayer and guts to get them here. And I didn't want to miss out on that. And so for me, I don't want to choose business over my children ever. And for me, that number changes every year based on what sports they have or what things that we have going on during the year. So, for example, this year I said 60 is my limit. 60 families is who I'm willing to serve. And I work, Jason, 100% via referral. So I have a lot of control over that process. And once I hit 60, as I'm barreling towards 60 this year, I already know who in the real estate world that I want to refer to the rest of the business because I want them to be cared for. I don't want to just say no. So I have these relationships with real estate agents in my market centers that are excellent, excellent agents. And those are the folks that I'm going to refer to once I hit that 60 mark. Also, I set this expectation in September and I say, hey, folks, if you know of anybody that's seriously looking to buy or sell in 2024, now is the time to let me know. And if that's not you or someone you know in 2024, raise your hand if you want to be on the wait list for 2025. So I've already got like 14 people scheduled for 2025. And then this quarter is where we really focus on events with the clients so that we can really set up for 2025. The event that I have for my service providers, which we're going to talk about, called the Gratitude Dinner, that's actually in March. And that's what helps me set up my 2025 through that avenue of the network, the networking piece.
That is such a big idea. I mean, you're what we would call a quote unquote solo agent, but there's nothing solo about you. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But the idea that you look up and that you set a number of transactions based on the amount of time it takes you and emotional effort to pour into a client, which ultimately is also tied to the amount of money that you want to have to fund the life you want to live. But then you're willing to say when, and you're actually referring it to people in your market center, local agents.
Mm-hmm.
Are there days when you wake up in late December and say, oh gosh, but it would be nice to have a few more dollars to buy the presents at the end of the year? Or, well, I really like this person. Maybe I'll break my rule for them. Like, isn't it a little scary to say no to business?
It's not. I mean, of course, there are referral fees, so I'm not ever really losing business. And I know that they're being taken care of really well by this person. It's more important for me to stick to what I've said and to be honest with my word, because I think that's a really slippery slope where you can say, but what about this person and what about this person? But I also promised my children that we would spend 2 weeks at the beach house and they would have me. And I just won't go back on that. And that was a promise that I made myself. If I can get personal, when I asked God if we could have children, if we could have more children after our son died, I made a commitment to be like the best parent I could be. My husband as well, he's my director of operations. He does all my photography and Matterport and all that good stuff. So we're able to really structure it. So we have to say, when is enough enough? And for me, I make that decision in the beginning of the year. And then you cross your fingers and hope that you actually have all the business that you think you're going to get. But I've always, even last year, which I felt, and I think a lot of agents would agree, 2023 was a tough year. 2024 is tough too. I mean, people can sugarcoat it and maybe some people are doing things differently. But 2023, I did 50 transactions and I felt at the beginning of the year, I didn't know that it was going to be so hard. And so as we got through the year, I said, I think 50 is pretty reasonable. And I did cut it off at 50 at that point. And because it was a hard 50, Jason. Last year was like it was a hard 50.
You don't have to tell me. I was out there with you, my dear. I know all about it. And so do our listeners. By the way, it's a unique idea. It's a unique premise that you put forward. Gary Keller. And by the way, if you're new to the show is called the Millionaire Real Estate Agent Podcast. And the book was The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, which was written by Gary Keller, Jay Papasan, and Dave Jenks. May he rest in peace. When we say Gary, that's who we're talking about. Gary, in his rookie year, set a goal to do, I believe it was 25 transactions back in the 70s. And he hit his goal in November and then took the rest of the year off. And when the manager of the office said, "What are you doing, man? You sell one more home, you're going to be rookie of the year." He said, "I already hit my goal." And he enjoyed his November and December. Aubrey, you sound so much like him when you say that.
Well, that's the best compliment I could get. I listen to Gary's stories often in his group, and I do try to model myself after him as much as possible. And his idea that you also really don't have to reinvent the wheel. You stick to the things that you do well and you do them at a high level, and you sort of like get rid of everything else, just focus. And that focus really allows you to have the big life that you want. It does.
All right, so I want to hit structure, and then I want to get into lead gen. And the reason I want to do this is because ultimately we've interviewed more team owners than we have quote unquote solo agents. And so I want to be really clear. Nobody succeeds alone and nobody fails alone. And this idea of I'm solo, which means I have to do it all by myself, I think is a misnomer. And I think you're a great example of that. So if you're driving right now and you want to take notes, don't worry about it. I'm taking the notes. You can get them on MREAnotes.com. They come out every Thursday. I will give you the notes. I'm on it. So Aubrey, tell us about your structure. How does it work?
Yeah, I think this idea that there's any one path to success is a really limiting belief. And when I hit about 22, 23 transactions a year, I realized I was really in over my head, and I'm not really that strong in paperwork and back end stuff. And it was really kind of just weighing my business down. So my first hire was a transaction coordinator. She's actually the TC. She has a team within our market center. So she's not my personal admin, but we really grew together. She then started doing my listing preparations as well. So she really has changed my business in an enormous amount of ways. And her business has changed with me because I've needed things that other agents haven't asked for before. So she really sort of grew her business alongside me. So that was really the first hire. The second hire was my husband, because he was a programmer and lost his job during COVID. And we realized that as a professional photographer, he could make so much more money just working with us as a family team than he could back what he was doing. So he was really the second one. Then he does my Matterports and my floor plans and my websites and my marketing and all that. And, you know, Jason, I'd have to pay someone a lot of money to do what he does. So he's great. Plus he also does the cooking and the cleaning and all the other stuff too. So he's pretty amazing. And then I think I did something a little unique. And this is something I haven't seen too much in our industry. There is a friend of mine who's another individual agent within my market center. She's been in the business a couple of years longer than I had. She left a team and had been kind of struggling to find her footing as a business owner, not on a team. And she doesn't really have the business that she wants. So I started asking her if she would be okay showing homes, sitting inspections, bringing shoe booties over, you know, kind of being a runner. All of those things kind of boots on the ground, because frankly, I didn't really have the time to do a lot of that kind of legwork. However, she sits in with me on my buyer consultations with my clients. She's part of all of that kind of communication, but I'm the one who does all the negotiation. I'm the one talking to the agents. I'm the one doing everything else. I'm their contact. And in response for that, she gets a part of the compensation when we get paid. And in 1 year, she made over $100,000 just from my clients, just from mine.
It's kind of unique to our industry, but it's like a real estate assistant, meaning that because she's licensed, she can do a whole range of activities for you, but she isn't the linchpin between buying and selling. She just makes you a better version of yourself, it sounds like.
She does. And she's got a great personality. I think she's a real good yin to my yang in a lot of ways. She helps with stagings. You know, she's done a lot of wonderful things, but she has her own database. And she has her own people, and I have my own database. So I don't refer all of my buyers over to her for showings and whatnot. Some of them I keep. It just depends on kind of where I am in my business. But it's been a really wonderful symbiotic relationship. And it allowed me this summer to spend about 2.5 months at my coastal home in Washington. I still close 16 homes. I came down to Portland every few weeks or so to just, get listing appointments done or do whatever I had to do. You all dragged me down to Mega Camp to speak, and I drove down from Oregon to Austin. So that was a little break in the beach time as well. But aside from that, I was really able to do business as usual with this woman, Crystal, in place, and Emily, who's my coordinator.
And as we sit today, your coordinator runs a coordination business and has a myriad of other clients. So she's not just dependent on you.
No.
And this agent assistant that you're talking about runs her own book of business independently and then helps you. And in compensation, is it a fixed dollar amount or a percentage of each transaction?
It's a percentage. And what's beautiful about this situation is that there's nobody on payroll other than my kids. There's nobody on payroll. So if I feel like I want to keep more of the business, then I do. Emily only gets paid if I have a transaction.
I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Feel free to answer neither of them because of the power in editing. I can fix it.
Okay.
Our people are going to say, well, what's the percentage? Can you give us a guiding on this?
Yeah. So I pay Crystal 15% of the transaction. And sometimes she shows 2 houses and sits one inspection and she's done. And sometimes it's 20. It just kind of balances out. So about 15% goes to Crystal.
Your kids are on payroll. Why did you do that?
My accountant told me to, and she's definitely smarter than I am.
Love that, by the way. And if you don't know what we're talking about, please contact your local accountant and a professional lawyer. That never hurts. And find out exactly what the rules are locally and if that would be a great thing for you to be doing. And by the way, if you're going to do it, call your financial advisor as well, because it might be paying them and then funding an IRA, which they can either self-direct or can do through a company. Again, check with all local lawyers and follow all the rules. Okay, so now I understand this structure. And I understand how it works. And I understand that you're calling it good at 60 or 70 or 75 deals. It's still a hell of a lot of deals, Aubrey. What's the button? What's the lever that you pull? Tell us exactly how to go build a service provider network, a vendor network that results in all these referrals.
So I started real estate in 2017, and I was just learning the business, and I didn't know anybody. I had no sphere. So aside from doing 1 trillion open houses, which I did, I had to think of other ways to spend my time. And what I've always enjoyed is meeting with other business professionals doing networking, and specifically women in the service industry. And I mean general contractors and window cleaners and gutter cleaners and all of the people. So I made it really my mission to find networking groups where that was really the focus. So I started off in my very first year of real estate meeting with women in the service industry in my office over tea. And the purpose of that meeting was not to talk about me or real estate or any of those things. I really just wanted to know how I could be of service to them. What does their business look like? Who are they looking for? What kinds of things do they do? And what I started doing is, because I didn't have any business really at that point, because I think I sold 13 my first year, so I had a lot of free time. And what I did was I started listening to my community via, Nextdoor and the Facebook community groups. And people always ask, like, who's your favorite roofer? Who's your favorite whatever? And so I created a directories of all of the people that I was meeting. And by the way, I also checked up on these folks before I put them in my directory. In other words, I asked for references, because I'm not just going to that's like, there's no difference of Googling if you're not actually checking up on these people. So I would meet with them for tea for half an hour, get some references. And then if everything looked good, then I would put them in my directories. And I even printed out in my first year directories and then asked my community, hey, does anybody want a directory of my preferred service providers? And of course, then I marketed my name everywhere. That's really how it started.
Because I didn't realize when we started talking about it, and we said step 1 was network. And so networking the best way to do it was to meet with existing networks that are there and business owners. You mentioned a group, mother-owned businesses, which I didn't even know was a thing until I Googled it. Those groups are all over the country.
Yeah, so mother-owned businesses mob started here, and then they started having kind of larger groups throughout the country. But yes, this idea of supporting women, sort of an underserved group within the service community, yeah, they started popping up everywhere. And then I would go to these events. And what was wonderful at the time is I could bring my children so that it really felt like an authentic group of people who have parenting stuff and, issues and all of that, but still are business women. And that's really how it all started, was with that group.
And then you end up becoming the president of the local BNI chapter. Which, for our friends that might not be clear on what that is or why there's value there, how would you explain that to them?
So BNI, Business Networking International, is a very structured group. I was part of this group before we even decided to become a BNI chapter. But what's great about it is there's a lot of accountability, and there's only one profession per seat. So in other words, there's one person per profession. So I'm the residential real estate agent. There's one lender, one insurance person, one financial planner, et cetera. And we don't have a huge group, but we have a highly productive group. I gave about $1.1 million in the last 12 months in business to my BNI partners. And yeah, it's about, again, like being of service to these people. I know them. I love them. They're my friends. I know their children. I want them to do well. And so if I know someone who's looking for a health insurance agent, I have the perfect person. I sold her and her husband a home. I know all 5 of their kids' names. And if they're going to need someone anyway, why not use someone who's wonderful that I can really help put food on their table, help support? Yeah, so it's a win-win.
All right, so step 1 is networking. So I'm going to meet with these people. And in your case, and if I get it wrong, tell me. In your case, I'm actually going to be human, care about them, and I'm going to be on the journey with them. Which then brings us to number 2, which is provide value. Here's what you told us. You said providing value is more than what you can give someone. It's about how you make them feel. What did you mean when you said that?
So I think that one of the things that I have done well, that I wish that was something that I really thought about doing, but just sort of comes naturally to me, is when I have a closing, for example, on socials, I'm tagging everybody that had anything to do with this closing. I don't put the onus and the spotlight on me. There's no cheesy smile with a key. There's none of that. It's my client's story, and then really giving gratitude, sincere gratitude to those people. So my florist on retainer who sent flowers to the seller who decided to sign a listing with me, the cleaner, the stager, my construction crew that comes in to list prep and get all those things done before we go on the market.
I heard, and I don't remember where I heard it. I think I was sitting in a room and you were teaching, but you will sometimes bring a contractor to a listing appointment with you. Why do you do that?
I 100% do, because I do a pre-listing conversation with the seller and I say, hey, is there anything that you think that would sort of hinder your home putting its best foot forward before we hit the market? And they say, might have some blown seals in my windows, or like, oh, the furnace is doing something funky. Whatever it is, I bring my general contractor with me to the appointment and we figure out, does this matter or does it not matter? Also, and this is such a gift, my vendors allow my clients to take the money out of escrow for all of these things. Like I have a big listing right now. She had to have her furnace replaced, her AC replaced. She had to have a whole bunch of decks rebuilt, all of these things. They're all coming out of escrow. And my service providers do this for me specifically. It's not something that they offer to most people, but it's because I kind of give them a lot of business. And it's not just within the context of my business, but when I'm tagging all of those people on social media, all of those people that have done the, clean the furnace, all of these people in my social networks see these companies over and over and over again. And I'm also tagging them whenever anybody in the community is looking for someone great. Like I'm always going to tag my furnace person because her company allowed to take it out of escrow. And so if they're looking for someone to replace a furnace, I'm going to recommend them, even if they're not my client. So it's constantly, when you ask how they feel supported. They feel like I'm doing more than just referring to my clients, but that I'm really taking care of them and their business. And I think that's why they give so much back in return.
We had Brittany Hodak, who wrote the book Superfan. We just had her on our program. And she said it's not enough anymore to have a database. You need to have an advocate group. And it sounds like you advocate passionately for the people that you're trying to refer business to.
In an authentic way. One of the things that I said at Mega Camp, and I really meant this, is it can't be a gimmick. Like, it has to be real. And when you want a dentist for your kids and you move to a new area, you could Google it. But what you really want is someone to say, oh my gosh, I take my kiddo here. They are amazing. I mean, you're not going to go around looking at other dentists after that. You're like, oh, great. So-and-so takes their kid. And that's really what I want I want to be the person that the community comes to when they need something, regardless if I can get anything from them. That's really the key, is to truly be of service is not about what you can get from them, but what you can give to others. And if you do that and you do that from a sincere place, I promise the business comes back to you. It will, if you make them a priority.
Okay, so I want to ask specifically, because I've been in relationships before where I'll meet somebody and I'll send them a client or two, and there's this is great, but I don't get anything back. And I'm not keeping score, Aubrey. I promise I'm not that kind of guy. But how do I get purposeful? And do I have a conversation about my expectations with them? Am I setting up a formal business to business? Am I just hoping I get lucky? Is if I do enough good deeds, good things happen? How do I get reciprocation?
I don't have the conversation of that reciprocation, because I think that if you're really trying to be of service, it's not about that. But I let my actions do the talking, and I'm constantly tagging these people or highlighting them. And they see me tagging them, so they know that I am actively trying to help support their business, even if it has nothing to do with my business whatsoever. If it has nothing to do with the real estate sale, it doesn't matter, that I'm actively supporting their business. The other thing that I do, which I think is so important, I haven't heard of other companies doing this, but every spring or kind of late winter, I do what I call a gratitude dinner. And the gratitude dinner is specifically for my service providers and professional partners. So my accountant, my financial planners, my lenders, but then also, my general contractors and, pavers and landscapers and all of those people. The people that, frankly, when they have a transaction with me, they're not making the same kind of money that I do. My cleaner getting $400 to do a clean for a listing prep, I want to show them that I really appreciate what they do. And we usually have 80 to 100 people there. I don't have any sponsors for this event. I always have sponsors for all of my client events, not for this one. This one is on me. And the most amazing thing, Jason, happens at this event. Not only do I think they really feel that I'm their friend, that I want them to succeed, that I'm proud of them, and I have a lot of gratitude, but they then start to meet each other. And then they start doing business with each other. And it's the most amazing thing. My transaction coordinator found her florist for her wedding at the gratitude dinner. It's beautiful. It's this idea that you can create a microeconomy that is so strong that whatever is happening out there, I'm going to be the one that knows if someone has to buy or sell. Even if things are weird and interest rates are weird and Federal Reserve is weird and you want to punch Jerome Powell in the face and all of those things, right? All of those, I'm just kidding, sort of. But, even if all of those things are happening, you have this microeconomy bubble that makes it so that they're only going to use you. So my financial planner, my lenders, my title person, my GCs, they all have used me to help buy and sell. And so the way to have people refer back to business to you is to really just give unabashedly. Just do it. That's it. With no expectation of anything, don't make it weird. Just show them that you're actively trying to promote their business. And when you mentioned BNI, this is giver's gain. There's a big thing in BNI called giver's gain, and it means just show up to give to others. If you show up at BNI because you're expecting to get something back, you're going to be disappointed and it's not going to work the way you want it to.
So number one is network. I got to meet the people. Number two, I provide value. By the way, I love that you said you vet them. You're going to make sure they're the right folks. Number 3, show support digitally. So you told us you have an online directory, and that's kind of the key that you lead with. Tell us about that. Where is it hosted? How did you make it? Are you a computer genius, and how can we do it?
Not a computer genius, as your assistant can attest. And it's on martinfamilyrealestate.com/directories. And it's a living, breathing document. So companies go out of business. I find companies that I love. I add, I subtract. I have people that say, you know what? I did not have a good experience with this company. Like, things happen over time. So living, breathing document that we add and subtract to. And also, I don't hide it. So I provide that link. If someone in one of my community groups is interested in finding a couple of options for, foundation experts or, whatever it is, I send the link. It's open to everybody. I want everybody to participate.
I think it's genius. And then the last step, you said show gratitude. And that's the gratitude dinner. And that's making sure that your vendors know how much they matter to you.
Yeah. And I also always give my vendors an opportunity at my other events to participate. For my pie event, pumpkin event, whatever thing I've got going on, if they want to have a table, I always give them that option. It helps pay for the event, but also it really helps to connect them with my clients. So whatever opportunities I can give, I also do that.
All right, so then here's the question. Let's just say in an average year, you're doing 70 transactions. How many are coming by way of referral from your vendor network?
Yeah, so it's about 40% is coming from my vendor network, and I'm 100% referral. So 40% is from them. Probably about 25% right now is coming from other agents in other parts of Oregon or Washington or just around the country. And then the rest of it really comes from past clients and past client referrals. So either they're buying or selling again, or they're sending a friend or a family member. So it is database, Jason. Of course it's database. It's always database, but it can't just be database. The events and the networking, those are my 3 legs of lead generation. That's it. And those are the only things I focus on.
Well, you're just curating multiple databases. Your network is your net worth. You're cultivating a database of vendors, business to business, and you're cultivating a database of buyers and sellers.
Yeah. And I'm in an area that I hadn't been to in 15 years. I had no sphere here. I've only been in real estate for 7.5 years, right? So anybody can do this, really. It's really just, I think, the lead generation that's the best one is the one that you'll actually do and that you like. The rest of it is like, just make sure that you're doing it at a high level. And the thing that I really love is to be of service to other people, which I know is sort of trite, but it's the truth.
It's trite to say, it's not trite to live.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Sure.
All right, we want to switch gears. We want you to come and hang out with us and talk philosophy. So if you go all the way back to ancient Athens, there was this philosopher named Epicurus who built this cool house in downtown Athens, and he built this amazing garden. And he would sit and he'd have conversations with the greatest thinkers of his day, and it became known as the garden. Will you join us in our garden?
Sure. Can't wait.
What's the secret to being in business with a spouse?
Really excellent expectations and communication. We've been together for 25 years, and we've been in business more than real estate for a really long time. He is about as different from me as you can possibly get. I think really communicating, but also really respecting what the other person brings to the table. I am the rainmaker, but he does everything else. And I think just really respecting that the amount of work that your spouse does, even if it's not what you do, and setting that expectation is the most important thing.
You mentioned earlier that you made a bargain with God, and that was how you were going to live if you were lucky enough to be blessed with children.
Right.
That's a huge thing to say. Can you walk me through or give me an idea of how faith has shown up in your life and in your business?
It's interesting because faith was not a huge part of my life growing up. I'm from New York City, and there was sort of culture and faith everywhere around me without me having to really look for it. And then I moved to Maine, where there were far fewer of those opportunities. And I don't know that I had really thought about it that much. And to be honest with you, before we had our first son, I don't know that I knew how much I wanted to be a mother. I don't think I knew that. And then once he was born and then passed away, I really switched gears. It changed my whole life. It really did. We now, every year, we partner with a nonprofit through our events, through our real estate events. Last year was Make-A-Wish. We've raised $25,000 for a wish for someone to have it, all in his name, always in his name, I think that faith is something you can't see. And so you just have to believe that there is something greater out there, that there are people on the other side that are wanting you to really do some good in the world. And for us, we do it in his name always. It was by far the worst thing that's ever happened to us, but it changed our life. And that I think we are very aware of being really strong parents to our children.
The power of taking something so traumatic and turning it into such a positive is incredible.
The energy has to go somewhere, and it couldn't sit in that. I had to put it towards something different. And it was the only way to get up in the morning, honestly. And it's the only way I still get up in the morning, is this idea that like we're doing something good in his name, and that we have a, happy, healthy, pretty centered, moral kiddos, because we have the opportunity to see what it could have been like if things had gone differently.
Why the coastal home? You wake up in the morning and you're so purposeful about your time and you're so purposeful about the experience. What was it and why this?
We found this place during the pandemic. I swear it was on Facebook. And you know how things are on Facebook. It's not really real, except that we went to this place and it looked like Martha's Vineyard and Montauk and Block Island and all the places that I remember growing up, but it was on the Washington coast in the middle of nowhere. And this developer built this incredible community that has an ice cream shop and a bookstore. And my kids this summer, they rode bikes and they went kayaking and they went hiking and they went swimming and they made friends and they went to the horse barn. And it was the kind of life that I always wanted, and I always wanted to be able to give my children. It was the experience, and it was everything that I thought it would be. It's my happy place. And what's really awesome about this community is that now I am working up there as well, because I'm there half time. So yeah, this year we have 2 more closing this month, but we've sold 4 others. So, we've sold 6 in 2024. And it's great because I'm literally sitting on my porch and I'm reading and someone's walking by and they're like, gosh, I see that house is for sale. I wonder what that looks like inside. Oh, you know what? Let me help you. Let me just put down my book and my lemonade for a second. I'll be over in 5 minutes. It's like you couldn't write the story better.
It's so good. But it's such a real estate story because you buy the coastal property and now you're quote unquote in business there. You're going to do 14 units there with an average sales price of $2 million a house.
It's so crazy. And once you really understand what the process is up there, it's really kind of easy. And I think the cool thing about this particular community is that I don't know if there are other agents that live there that also sell there unless they're affiliated somehow with the builder.
I'm moving in. But I want to ask you, though, because that was an expensive purchase. So many people out there are waiting to live. They get scared of the number and they're, I'm not sure if we can do this. And are we really going to enjoy it as much as we think? Did you go through any of that, or did you just know it when you saw it?
I mean, I knew it when I saw it, but I also went through all of it because I'm super financially conservative and I've been on my own since I was 16. And I didn't even have a financial planner until I was 40 because I really didn't need one. So, I mean, I didn't really know anything about this stuff. And we went and I knew it when I saw it because it just took my breath away. It's called Seabrook in Washington. But we went like 7 or 8 more times. Just to see, because you know how it is. You go on vacation, you're like, I want to live here. And then you're like, you go home and you're like, forget it. But it never felt that way. And we went back and, for birthdays and holidays and all that sort of great stuff. And then I just said, to my husband, I'm like, I feel myself here. I feel like I can breathe. I feel differently. I love where we live in Portland Metro. I love it here, but I love who I am here. I'm the best version of myself here. I walk 5 miles a day. I'm outside with my kids. They're happy here. They're relaxed. I love seeing it.
Aubrey, you take my breath away. I think you are one of the most beautiful humans that I've ever met. I love the way that you talk about service. I love the way that you talk about people. I love the perspective that you give to life and the things in it that give us meaning. I'm so grateful for you being on this show. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Jason.
I love it. I love everything about it. I love the clarity that she brings in on her life. She says, I'm going to do 60, 65, 70 units a year, sets that number, hits that number because she is wildly competitive and then enjoys the rest of the year. And by the way, all she's doing is running 2 databases. The first one is this group of vendors, this business-to-business group that's going to account for a ton of her business. And she loves on those people. She's going to show gratitude to them. But before she gets into any of that, and this is the piece I love, she decides which vendors she needs. Then she's going to set up a vetting process to make sure that she gets people that will deliver on her customer value proposition. Then she's going to make sure to add value to everyone out there by sharing their information unabashedly. Then the idea of having an event just for your vendors to lavish love and praise on them is absolutely genius because she is a master at showing gratitude. Then this other database that she runs are all of her past clients, and she literally has them lining up to lock in their spots to do business with her next year. And that is a problem that all of us would love to have. You know the key to Aubrey Martin? Number one, she's clear on life and what's important to her. Number two, she's clear on the greatest gift of all, which is time and how she decides to use it. And number three, she wakes up every day with a servant heart that beats palpably to change people's lives for the better. These are things we can all learn from and things we should all do. Go forth and do likewise. There it is. That wraps another episode. Friends, I don't know what you're taking out of this. I really don't. I'll tell you what I want you to be taking out of it, which is these are the people that are having tremendously big lives. And the reason it's happening is because they're setting up the models and systems to do just that. Gary Keller told me that leadership is teaching people how to think so that they do the things they need to do when they need to do them so that ultimately they get the things they want when they want to have them. And that's what I want for you. You're all leaders, but it begins with leading ourselves. If you're enjoying this podcast, I want you to click the subscribe button anywhere that you get your podcasts. We want to be the voice in your head every single week. And every week we're dropping new content. We also send out a newsletter at the conclusion of every show to make sure that you get the highest points in the models and systems that were discussed. So if you want to sign up, I need your name and your email address. Head over to the millionaireagentpodcast.com. millionaireagentpodcast.com. Enter your name and your email address, and every week that newsletter will be in your box. Friends, you just went on a journey. I hope that what happens between now and the next time we meet is absolutely wonderful for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information. Warning. You must comply with the TCPA and any other federal, state, or local laws, including for B2B calls and texts. Never call or text a number on any do not call list, and do not use an auto dialer or artificial voice or pre-recorded messages without proper consent. Contact your attorney to ensure your compliance.